Okay, welcome everybody to the September 24th, 2025 regular meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission. If everybody can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, we can get started. Ready? Begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Ms. Vasquez, can you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Emel,
Here.
Commissioner Guerra,
Here.
Commissioner Selm,
Here.
Commissioner Weichel,
Here.
and Chair Callahan is absent.
Thank you. Ms. Vasquez, can you please make the public comments announcement?
This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. No individuals have requested to speak on the public comment item, and no written statements have been submitted for the public comment item. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking.
All right, thank you very much. Since we have no public comment speakers, we can move on to item number 5 in our agenda, which is the summary notes from our June 25th, 2025 meeting. Are there any comments from the commissioners on the summary notes? Okay, no comments, so we'll move on to item number 6, which is our engineers reports. And before we have the engineers reports presented, I just want to clarify that the Traffic Commission's role on these items is, well, first of all, let me just say that these are informational items. These are not action items. So the Commission's role is to basically receive the report from staff and to provide any input or comments that we may have on that report. So we will not be taking a vote or making any recommendations on these items. With that being said, can we have the first engineering report from Engineering Associate Mark Bueno?
Thank you, Vice Chair Emel. My name is Mark Bueno with the Public Works Traffic Division. I'm an associate engineer and also the project manager for the Active Transportation Plan update, also referred to as the ATP update. We have the traffic consultant for the project here to provide a brief overview of the ATP, give a status update, and answer any questions. This also serves as a public outreach workshop, so we're here also to gather feedback to be considered or incorporated into the updated ATP as we move along in the process. And with that, I'll hand it over to the traffic consultant, Lynn Scott Long Greenspan Engineers.
Good evening, Vice Chair Emel and Commissioners. My name is Zawar Sayed.
Sorry to interrupt. I think your microphone may be off.
Can you hear me better now?
Good. Thank
Good
you.
evening, Vice Chair Emel and Commissioners. My name is Zawar Sayed. I'm a principal with LLG Engineers. We're the consultant preparing the update to the 2019 ATP. With me, I have Angela Bessa, and we have a short presentation. After the presentation, we'll take comments and any questions you may have. I'll hand it over to Angela to start with the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Like Zawar mentioned, my name is Angela Bessa. I'm a transportation engineer at LLG, and we have been working with Mark and Jim on this Active Transportation Plan update. So just a quick agenda of what we're going to go through. We're going to go through a brief project introduction, as well as review the public outreach that we have done so far, cover the existing conditions analysis that we have completed, as well as our next steps to push this project forward. So just for a brief overview of the 2019 Active Transportation Plan, the ATP is developed to provide the city with planning guidance for non-motorized travel infrastructure improvements for the long-term future. And it strives to promote biking and walking, which reduces VMT and GHG emissions. It also heavily relies on public outreach, and so it takes into consideration input from the local community, local stakeholders, and city staff. And the current ATP was adopted in December 2019, and these documents are intended for a 5-year life cycle, so the city has undertaken this project to go ahead and update the ATP. And a quick review of the 2019 ATP's final recommendations. So the final recommended improvements for the city to consider for implementation over the long term included 16.5 miles of Class 2 bike lanes and 4.2 miles of Class 3 bike routes, 15 intersection improvements to add transition lanes to help guide bicyclists through the intersection, as well as 30 miles of new sidewalks, and a variety of programs to promote and implement active transportation in the community. So just to go over what has been completed from the 2019 ATP list, the city has completed 6 bike projects, and that included installing Class 2 bike lanes as well as Class 3 share rows. This also included 5 sidewalk projects. And in addition to these that were on the official ATP list, there have been around 17 bike projects that have been completed through the city's pavement program in the last 3 cycles since 2019. And these, again, included adding buffered bike lanes as well as adding share rows. There have also been 10 non-sidewalk pedestrian projects completed, and that involved installing rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which is a crosswalk warning system, and most of these have been installed around marked school crosswalks. So just to go over our public outreach thus far, LLG has prepared a project website, and that contains all of the project updates as well as including upcoming events. We created and circulated a feedback form and an online comment map where you could post your concerns and pin them to a specific location. And these were open from April through May for about 6 weeks during our first 2 outreach events. We also worked with the city on social media advertising, and the project has been highlighted in local newsletters, again, to just encourage that public outreach. And from that, we have received 135 paper and online feedback form submissions. We also received 99 online comment map submissions. And most of these comments have noted poor or missing bike lanes, as well as unsafe speeds as top concerns for the community. So our first outreach event was at the city's Arbor Earth Day celebration back in April 19th, where we got to talk to quite a few people. Quite a lot of members of the community came out. We got to encourage visitors to fill out the feedback form, and we had laptops for them to go through the online map together. If they, right then and there, we could do it. We also had a voting activity where visitors could mark their top preferences for improvements. And so from this activity, top 3 bike-related comments were, we want more bike lanes, we want more bike paths that are away from the street, and increased street lighting. We also met with the bicycle advisory team back in May. We provided a project overview as well as discussed completed ATP bike projects and the additional bike projects that have been completed through the city's pavement program. And one of the examples we highlighted was Westlake Boulevard between Avenida de los Arboles and Autumn Ridge Drive, which was enhanced to buffered bike lanes. So you can see in those 2 pictures there, as part of the pavement program, they went ahead and provided that buffered space, which increases safety for the bicyclists. And that was about a 0.6 mile stretch, again, completed through the city's pavement program. At this meeting, we also collected feedback, and we encourage everyone to participate in the feedback form and online comments map. And we will return to BAT to discuss the draft ATP update and its recommended improvements. So just moving into some of the existing conditions that we've done so far. So we've reviewed and updated the city's maps for bicycle facilities. Updates included added locations or upgraded facilities. And you can see on this map, or it might be a little tiny, but we have marked where there are Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 facilities. We also updated the pedestrian facilities, where there might be new sidewalks. It also notes the neighborhood access locations. We also revised crossing guard locations that have been changed since 2019, as well including trail routes. And we've also gone ahead and reviewed the transit facilities. So routes from Thousand Oaks Transit have been revised based off of revised service changes that have happened since 2019. And transit is important to consider as part of active transportation, as passengers may use active transportation to get to and from a bus stop. We've also reviewed the collision analysis. So we've reviewed collision data from the city for the last 5 years, so from 2020 to 2024. That's sourced from the Statewide Integrated Traffic Record System, or SWITRS. During this period, there were 112 bicycle-related collisions, as well as 96 pedestrian-related collisions. We did want to note that these numbers are down from the study period of the 2019 ATP, which recorded 157 bike incidents and 117 ped incidents. And we went ahead and also updated the propensity model. So the propensity model takes various existing conditions as well as demographic data into consideration, and it generates a map here that you can see that shows how likely the area is to generate pedestrian activity. So this propensity model includes the attractors, which are based off of existing land uses. So what might someone want to walk to? Perhaps a commercial area or a school or a park. And the generators, which is the demographic data. Where are the people located and how far are they from these attractors? And it also takes into consideration the barriers that it might be for someone to walk. The speed of the local road, the existing facilities that might be between you and that shopping center that you're walking to, the collision history in the area, as well as anything from the slope of the roadway. Is it hilly? Just factors that indicate, the degree of difficulty it might be to walk somewhere. So you'll see that the area in red is the area that is most likely to generate pedestrians. And so you'll see around Thousand Oaks Boulevard, as well as some of the commercial areas that are in that abut residential zones, are areas where people are more likely to walk. And areas less likely to walk, which might be the bluer areas, there might be less attractors, or there might be less people, or there might be less facilities available. And so we want to make sure when we are doing our recommended improvements that we are concentrating to these areas where people might walk, and we want to encourage such things. So we want to provide facilities for that. And we also created a propensity model for bicycle activity as well. So that took in the same sort of factors. And you'll see here that, again, Thousand Oaks Boulevard, Moore Park Road running north-south, as well as the southwest city of the areas are areas for high likelihood of bike propensity. So just going over our next steps that we have on our agenda. So we have our last public workshop is scheduled with the Conejo Valley Unified School District, and that will focus to active transportation specifically around school areas, and we have that scheduled for October 14th. And once we've completed all of our initial meetings with stakeholders, we're going to work with the city to develop a preliminary list of recommended improvement projects based off of all of our analysis and all of the feedback that we received with the different groups. We'll then complete that draft ATP and circulate for additional comments. And we'll meet again with BAT, as well as we'll come back here to commission to present the draft ATP. And once that list of recommended improvements is finalized, we will bring the ATP to City Council. So in the meantime, we're still taking comments via the ATP project webpage. So although the feedback form and the online comments maps have now closed, you can still visit toaksatp.org. You can click on contact us in that top right corner, and you can send us a message, and that will go to the project email. With that, we'd just like to thank you for having us tonight, and Zawar and I are here to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
Right. Thank you very much for the report and for all of your hard work. I do believe that we have some public speakers on this item, but before we get to the public speakers, I'm going to open the floor to the commission to ask staff and the engineering consultants any questions if you have any. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Guerra.
So one of so thank you again for the report. It was very thorough. But one thing that I wanted to outline that hasn't been addressed, and that has to do with the disability population. So I understand that for wheelchair access, there is a slope at the end of the curb, but I'm just wondering if there has been any other additional consideration to people that do have wheelchair access to have them have a more of a sense of, I don't know how to put it, but just so that they can get out of the house and that they can share the sidewalk. I know that you're emphasizing bikeability and walkability, but there is a certain segment of our population that is getting older. And so my thinking is that at some point we're going to be needing more access on the streets and to make it friendlier for people to have access for wheelchairs. So I'm just wondering why that wasn't included. And it isn't just older adults that have disabilities, but other populations, younger children, anyone that has had some type of disability, and you don't want them to just sit around in the house, right? You want them to have access just like everybody else in the community. One other question that I had was, and I know that you're not emphasizing electric transportation, but since this report was completed in 2019, there's more of an emphasis on electric bicycles. So how was that factored in, or in terms of sharing the road, the bike, the bike lanes?
We did consider the bikes, electric bikes, they go in the same category as the regular bikes.
So it was considered.
Correct.
Okay. So my sense of electric bikes, and this is just anecdotal, right?
Okay.
What I see on the streets as a motorist or as a pedestrian, are they sharing the roadway or the bike lane?
The bike lane.
The bike lane.
Correct.
Okay, and they're going at a faster speed than
We are going to have some other non-infrastructure recommendation in the report, which is going to be like enforcement and education for electric bikes.
Okay, there was something that was cited in the pamphlet, that the report that you put together in 2019, and that was AB 1096. Can you talk to that and how that, because I think at the report, it hadn't been voted on? Do you know anything about AB 1096?
Well, we can look into that.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to monopolize the time.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any of the other commissioners have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Selm.
I'm going to defer to you, Chair Amel, because I have several questions. So do you want to go back and forth, or?
No, I'll ask away.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try not to take up too much time for my fellow commissioners' sakes. Thank you all so much. This is really exciting. To Chair Guerra's point about disability rights advocates and reaching out and trying to understand what they need, I have to say, you're always going to hear this when you do a project like this, so I apologize. More outreach, I think, is better in this case to a broader range of people. I would like to see like targeted outreach, bilingual outreach to community members who have to rely on multimodal transportation for their livelihoods, disability rights advocates, senior rights advocates groups. Like, I think more targeted outreach. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit if there's any of that kind of engagement that's going on?
Yes, so for the ATP update, we're looking at doing various workshops, the ones mentioned, the Arbor Earth Day, to kind of gather, to pair that with like a bigger community event to attract more comments. We've also visited the Bicycle Advisory Team, and we'll be going back to them. We're going to be meeting with the Conejo Valley Unified School District as well to do a more school-focused outreach. We are trying to use social media to get out there and get more input. As noted, any comments are welcome in the website. And we can look into doing additional outreach, but these are all public meetings, so anyone can join, and they can join in person or virtually, so many people have access to them.
Thank you for that. I understand that level of outreach that's been described. I just think that there's populations that may not be reached in those capacities through like online comment forms and events. So I would recommend, if you have budget for it and time, to possibly partner with a community partner who can help you reach communities that are harder to reach, that may really have something to say about multimodal transportation in Thousand Oaks. Just a recommendation. And can I ask a few more questions? That's okay. All right, I'm curious about updates to the general plan. I know that number of attractors is like one of the elements that's considered in the criteria in 2019 for ranking bike paths. Is that, I know that this is like, hasn't happened yet, but do you consider like future attractors in rankings in the criteria for this update? Because some of our land uses change, right? Like we might be developing higher density housing in the mall or something like that. Does that kind of change the landscape?
No, we use the existing because this ATP is supposed to be updated every 5 years, so we do it for existing conditions.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to double check on that. Thank you for the updates on the implementation. That was good to see. I think that one thing that you've been hearing, since 2019 is that people like multi-use paths. They like class 4 bike lanes. They like separated bike lanes. So I think that was even stated in 2019, and then you read further about what's actually recommended, and it's a little disappointing because it's all just class 2s and 3s. So I would like to see that in the ATP update, that you're considering more class 4s in the arterials and then more bike lanes on residential streets that could connect to those major arterials and then also to the existing multi-use paths that we have, because I think there's some disconnect there of folks being able to use those multi-use paths, like the ones that go from Hillcrest to Wilbur or the Conejo Creek South Park ones. So just a recommendation on the future update there. And also, I just want to mention Thousand Oaks Boulevard, the lane diet. I'm curious to hear from you all whether or not that's going to be considered in this update.
So for background, the 2019 ATP did recommend converting travel lanes or removal or parking to accommodate bike lanes along Thousand Oaks Boulevard in that recommended list of improvements. And with this update, we are reevaluating all of those original improvements in the 2019. However, in the previous ATP, it did mention that further study is required. So Thousand Oaks Boulevard is a challenge because each segment of the boulevard has a different context. Each segment would need to be evaluated for roadway capacity to determine if one lane in each direction could support the amount of daily traffic on the boulevard. And regarding removal of parking, some businesses use street parking as part of their parking requirements per the municipal code. So the ATP doesn't go into this level of detail. As mentioned earlier, the ATP is a guidance document. It provides a recommendation to be considered and analyzed. So similarly for this document, each project listed would still require additional engineering studies to be developed and determine feasible design options, and may even require additional outreach separate from the ATP. So it is being looked at as part of this ATP, but there may need to be, again, additional analyses needed in the future.
Okay, I hear that. I would like to see that as another as an existing recommendation, uplifting that again. I think that, you just showed through the propensity model and then also in 2019 that this is a high traffic area. It's also the place in 2019, at least, with the most fatalities and the most injuries from bicycle accidents. So I think it makes a lot of sense to think about not only how can we make downtown more walkable and vibrant, because that's what brings people to a downtown, but also how can we make it safer so that people actually want to go there and walk around. So I think I will yield the rest of my time, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions of staff or the engineering consultants on this item? Okay, Commissioner, please.
Thank you again for the report. Just a couple things from the previous ATP. I noticed 9% incomplete sidewalks. Like, that was a statistic. I know it might not factor into some of the other parts of this program. Where are we at with that? Are those sidewalks filled, or are they left abandoned? It would seem to think to me that it would be kind of a liability to have that.
See if this microphone works. Hi, Commissioners, Nader Haidari, Public Works Director. Yeah, the previous ATP did have a ranking list and some priority for the missing sidewalk elements, and the city has been able to achieve and leverage that to obtain some grant funding that has allowed us to build a lot of those missing sidewalks out, including Willow Lane and Caneo School Road, Westlake Boulevard, Rancho Road, North Moore Park Road, and several other areas. And we have others in design right now for us, for instance, on Lynn Road. So we do continue to chip away at that. There is no funding for sidewalks in the city budget. There is no funding source, dedicated funding source for building additional streets or sidewalks. So we are basically, that's why we're focused on using the ATP to try to get grant funding to help make those projects a reality. I think in total, just those ones I've listed, if you put them all together, some of them include bicycle elements too, but it's about $15 or $20 million worth of work that's either been completed or is in process. So, we have a lot of miles of roadway. We have still obviously some sidewalk gaps here and there that, for whatever reason, as the town developed, those areas weren't fitted out with sidewalks. We've started making headway also in the Rancho Caneo industrial area. We started building the sidewalks there for the first time a few months ago. And again, that was a grant funded. That was a 100%, almost 100% grant funded project that otherwise wouldn't have been able to be achieved without that grant funding. So, and that's what the goal is. So we'll take the ATP recommendations, and then we'll be able to pursue different grant funding sources that are out there for transportation infrastructure improvements.
What would the rough cost be of 10% of Thousand Oaks sidewalks, just to give us an idea?
Yeah, so we have, I believe, 600 or 700 miles of sidewalks in town. So 60 miles of sidewalks. It's in the $100 million range, or probably more.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bicycle advisory, the BAT. I was curious about that because respondents to surveys and your research, there's a big distinction between athletic cyclists and commuters, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the breakdown is, I guess, my main question. Do we have any information on that? Because if survey responders are 90% cyclists for athletics, that skews data, or at least informs it.
Great. So at that BAT meeting, even within that group itself, I don't have an exact breakdown, but based off of, and it was, you could see from the picture, it was actually very well attended from that group. It was a mix of people who were avid cyclists and people who kind of were getting into it. Mm-hmm. There was a mix of range of comments from, the buffered bike lanes is what got me into biking. That was my first step. They added a buffered bike lane in my area, and so now I started biking. So it was a range of people who, they're relatively new to it, and those who are very avid cyclers. So unfortunately, I don't have that breakdown, but from the group itself, we seem to have a wide range of users. And we also even had at Arbor Earth Day, we were even talking to kids. So wide range of group there.
Your survey responders, though, almost none of them were students. There was one, right?
I believe so. The ones that we did talk to at Arbor Earth Day, like they were there with their parents, so their parents probably filled out the survey when we were standing with them. But no, I don't think we had too many other than the one student who actively responded.
It's interesting because, I mean, this community thrives and supports cyclists, but I think serving both groups effectively, the commuters and the cyclists, is what's going to define success for the program. So I look forward to seeing more information on that. And I also wanted to end with just a comment. The improvements to the pedestrian points on Lawrence is something I think I'm really looking forward to, because there's a lot of businesses over there, and I feel that some of the public works might be in need of modernization. So I think that's going to be amazing. That's it for me.
I just wanted to add one more point for the commuter cyclists and for the recreational cyclists. As part of the propensity model, there was Strava data compared to it and found there was very similar areas where the propensity model, which is kind of looks at everything overall, and Strava, which is more so the athletic, there was many similarities in that comparison. So that is being looked at as part of this analysis.
All right, thank you. Does the commission have any more questions for staff or the engineers? Okay, it doesn't look like it. So I understand that we have some public speakers on this item. Ms. Vasquez, can I go ahead and just call up the public speakers?
Yes, yeah, go ahead and call them up. Let me make a quick instructions. At the podium, you're going to see a box, 3 colors. When your time to speak starts, the green light will go on. When you have 1 minute before your time is up, the yellow light will go on. And when the red light goes off, that means your time to speak is up. So you get a total of 3 minutes. And then when you start, please state your name and residence for the record before you start, okay? Okay, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. Okay, so for our first speaker, we have Benjamin Kuo.
Great. Thank you very much to the Commission for having me here and for all the work by the staff on this. I know I provide my input through BAT and other means. I did want to mention on the BAT question that I'm the only cyclist there that actually does any utility cycling, which is going around town. Everyone else there in that whole room in the picture is an athletic cyclist. And they're like, oh, we cycle 50 miles a day. And I go, oh, boy. So just be aware of that on the input. I just wanted to make a comment. I normally would bicycle here, except for the only way to get here from anywhere in town is on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and it's a Sharrows. And right now it's getting dark. And the only way, if you're going to bike now in the dark, is to risk being run over. So, we have a lot of issues in Thousand Oaks with people trying to use our roads and our transportation system as a utility, as a way to get around town, versus exercising when it's bright on a Saturday morning, and then a lot of stuff. So just please consider that. And then did want to stress, and I know I provide this input to folks involved, but really try to focus in on people using Thousand Oaks in their everyday life, getting to the store, going to school. A lot of the stuff we build nowadays is for athletic, recreational cyclists, and that sort of thing, which doesn't consider all the hardworking folks who aren't here, who can't be here because they're still working, especially look around apartments and townhomes, high-density housing and how do those people get to the store? How do they bike to work? How do they get places? So that's all the comments I wanted, and I'm eager to see your result and appreciate all the effort you guys have been doing. And hopefully we can implement this and maybe actually get funding for some of the improvements as well. Thank you.
Mr. Quo, thank you for your comments. Does the commission have any questions for the speaker? No questions. Okay, thank you, Mr. Quo. We are now going to call our second speaker, Aiden Wright.
Hello, my name is Aiden Wright. I'm located at 671 East Hillcrest Boulevard. I wanted to speak today to echo one of the concerns from Commissioner Selm about outreach, especially in bilingual fashion. The community that I am a part of is very well represented by the 20% as reflected in the general plan. The 20% Latino community is very well represented in my community, and I don't see a good way of engaging my neighbors and the people in my community around this topic when I also find that so about a year ago, I was in a financial position where I was not able to afford a car, and so I went ahead and purchased a bicycle to make it to and from work. And working in Newbury Park, while there are options like buses and whatnot in the city, the amount of time that it would take and the frequency meant that when I took my bike, I was often riding along parts of Hillcrest with limited light visibility, and the lack of lights around the bike infrastructure makes it very dangerous. And you can try and light yourself up with, have your cell phone camera flash on the whole time and have an extra flashlight and strap a light to your bike, but that's only going to make yourself so visible when somebody, especially in those parts of Hillcrest, like to go well above the speed limit because they feel like it's a less seen part of town. And you have people just coming around corners, not even paying attention. And it is a very scary route to try and navigate, especially in the wee hours of the night. So I would like to, again, request that additional outreach efforts be made to Spanish-speaking community members and that an emphasis on lights and visibility at night is added because that is an important aspect of safety.
All right, thank you for your comments, Mr. Wright. Does the commission have any questions for the speaker? No questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Would staff like to respond to any of the speaker's comments? Okay, no responses. Sorry.
Yes. Just to the note about outreach to the bilingual community, I completely understand. And I just wanted to note that at our Arbor Earth Day, we did have staff on hand available for bilingual conversations, which we had. Also, our feedback form and our online map were also available in Spanish. And I understand the need for more. I just wanted to note that we did have some. Oh, yes, and our website is available in Spanish as well.
So thank you very much. And so now we'll have questions from commissioners. Any
Chair,
cleanup items?
we still have one more speaker, and
Do
he's
we?
virtual.
Oh, my fault. My bad. I'm sorry. Sight unseen. I didn't know. Ms. Vasquez, can you please announce the virtual speaker?
Okay, so our virtual speaker on this is Clint Foltz. Clint, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. Clint, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Clint Foltz, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. So I would like to speak in favor of more studies looking into the road diet on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. As far as I'm aware, this road has the most fatalities and bike collisions in our city. A while back when I lived just off of Teal Boulevard and was without a car on Sundays when bus service was unavailable, I would choose to walk a great length of the boulevard, like a little under 2 miles, to get to work instead of riding my bike. That was just due to the sheer insanity and stressfulness of riding that stretch of road. It took me a lot longer to walk, obviously, and it was like a huge inconvenience, but I felt a lot safer and a lot less stress doing that. So a road diet on Thousand Oaks Boulevard would help reduce VMTs, help rethink our parking situation, and also help improve the economy of the downtown core by increasing foot traffic. I'd also like to add my support for more Class 4 bike lanes. In my work with the Conejo Climate Coalition, I hear from people all the time that they're too scared to ride on our streets here without more protection. And so lastly, I'd like to add that according to the California Air Resources Board, California needs a 25% reduction in statewide per capita greenhouse gas emissions by 2035 to meet our state's goals. And contrary to popular belief, zero emissions vehicles, EVs, alone are not enough to solve the climate crisis. The 2022 carbon scoping plan illustrated that despite cleaner vehicles and lower carbon fuels, the path to carbon neutrality by 2045 also depends on reducing per capita VMTs, meaning the total passenger vehicle miles driven by an average person in California on any given day. So thank you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Foltz, for your comments. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you earlier, but thank you. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Foltz? Not hearing any questions. Does the commission have any final questions for staff or for the engineers? Commissioner Guerra.
I'm wondering, since you only received 135 feedback responses and 99 online for a population of over 124,000, if it would be prudent to open it up again so that you can get a broader perspective on, on the population response to the transportation model.
Let me offer a comment, and then we can have an additional discussion as well. I believe the city's general plan, which was obviously an even larger and more extensive undertaking, roughly got in the same ballpark in terms of comments. I think it was in the hundreds. So I think the number that you referenced is pretty robust, or is one of the larger amount of feedbacks that the city receives or has received on any item over the past few years. So the several hundred or 180 or whatever the number was, it does seem like a pretty high number in terms of in comparison to other endeavors or programs that the city has rolled out in the last few years.
So I can understand that, but I think that there needs to be, as one of the gentlemen speakers spoke to, and as I've spoken to, and Commissioner Selm, we need to reach out, make a greater concerted effort to populations, make it more active rather than passive and just relying on social media and going to a website. You know, sometimes you just need to go to those specific populations so that you can get a more accurate understanding of what's going on in the population.
Yeah, and I believe that's why we augmented it with in-person events and some of these other events, as you had mentioned, that we have been boots on the ground with as well. But I can let the staff.
I think more rather than less. And I understand that you're going to CVUSD, but I think that there are other populations that also need to get input on something that's as important as this.
Yeah, so those comments are well received, and we'll reevaluate and consider that for additional outreach. I also just wanted to address some of the comments that were made from the public speakers. Some mentioned relate to street lighting. It was reviewed in the 2019 ATP and will still be a component in this updated analysis. Particularly during Arbor Earth Day, we did a lot of visitors of the booth did note street lighting as a concern as well. So that's something that will be included in this update. Again,
on that topic, I just want to piggyback on that comment. City Council 2 weeks ago just authorized the Public Works Department to work with Southern California Edison to replace all of the streetlights citywide with LED streetlights, and we're taking an additional measure beyond that, and we're right-sizing the lighting for all of the roadways. In many cases, we have very dim lights even on arterial streets, so we have taken the measure to check the general plan designation for each street and match that with the appropriate lighting for those roadways. And so when the LED light replacement project takes place from SCE next year, those lights, in many cases on some of these arterial streets, will be significantly brighter than the existing lighting that is currently out there. So that's a move in the right direction.
All right, Commissioner Wilkes.
Michael, close enough. Have you talked to the Chamber of Commerce at all about anything? Because, you know, they were addressing sample size, and, you know, the Chamber would have good access to just about every business on Thousand Oaks Boulevard and allow for data points on biking, you know, commuter bikers that actually work for them, truck deliveries as well, you know, big drop-offs when those happen, as well as peak business hours, right? And whether it's weekdays or weekends that they make their money, which is important, as you mentioned and referenced. Tio Boulevard has so many distinct sections to it. Having that data would probably enlarge your sample size by thousands, right? Business to business, at least.
Yeah, we can take a look into that, and also note that all these comments if there's a recommendation of how we could better do outreach, please use the website and let us know, because that would be helpful to kind of know what groups and how like specific contacts we can coordinate with. So all of these comments are great, and we just want to if you could also encourage others to participate by filling out going to the website and filling out comments. That would be helpful for the evaluation as a whole.
All right, thank you. I have one question. Maybe it might be more than one question. As one who's not afraid of asking a stupid question, do other cities have ATPs? Is this something that's a requirement? Is there some state law that requires a municipality to have an ATP?
Yes, that's correct. There is, it might not be named an active transportation plan, but it could be a bicycle master plan. It could be other names, but in order to apply for grant funding opportunities, you do need some form of an active transportation.
And does a municipality have to engage an engineering firm or a consulting firm in order to meet that state requirement? If you know.
I think so. If the city has the capacity to do an ATP in-house, the jurisdictions do them in-house.
Would you agree that it's cheaper to do it in-house than to hire an engineering firm?
That I do not know. Sorry.
Mr. Haydari, do you have any idea?
Well, I guess as the speaker mentioned, it all depends on the capability of that staff in-house. You know, if they try to take on something that they're ill-equipped to perform, they could be working on it for 5 years and still not complete it. So, that all depends.
Is the city of Thousand Oaks able to, prepare an ATP internally?
Likely we could, but then we would also then have to defer a lot of other work or other projects we're doing to put those aside to work on the ATP because of the sheer amount of hours involved to complete it.
So you could do an ATP internally, but you'd probably do a crappy job at it. There would be unintended consequences of other projects having to be put on the shelf while we complete the ATP. So it would impair it would have consequences. Minimum is 9 months or so. Maximum is probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years if you're can't get it done. Okay, thanks very much. Any more questions from the commission for staff? Okay, no more questions. So I'm going to close this item now to public input. Close the public comments section and open it up to discussion among the commission. And maybe I'll just kick off by saying that, you know, the point of my last line of questioning was, I think, to emphasize that we are blessed and we are lucky to live in a city like Thousand Oaks that places such an emphasis on getting an ATP done and getting it done right. I know that there may be a lot of questions that people have and a lot of thoughts about how it can be done better, and that's why we're here. But I think that as robust as this is, I think it's fantastic, and I'm very proud to live in a city that places a premium on a segment of the population, which is by far a minority, those who, you know, have to walk to work and bicycle, but yet we consider it to be important enough to, you know, prepare a big voluminous report over it and, you know, come up with maps of how we can do things better. So with that, we can have a discussion. Anybody want to respond? Commissioner Guerra?
I agree, and very well said. But I wanted to kind of reiterate what the plan going forward is based upon what our input has been. So my thought in reviewing this is to go back and to look at different populations and to do maybe a more robust outreach. So I'm just wondering if that's actually going to happen, or how does that, and the whole idea of so that's probably my my question.
Well, it's a good comment, and I think all the comments given by the commission tonight were really well received. And I don't disagree at all that, you know, outreach to different types of different communities, and especially those of, you know, a bilingual nature is really important, because that just expands the scope of people that you're reaching. And so I think by virtue of the questions that have been asked to staff and to the engineers, they have taken that and they will digest it, process it, and see what they can do with it. I mean, and that's our role, right, is to give comments and, you know, critique what's been done thus far. And I think we may not know what the result of our comments will be until they come back to us. When I think it was in, is it in 2026? Is that right? Right, 2026. So then we'll know then, you know, how our comments and our suggestions were incorporated into the final product. Any other comments? Commissioner Salm, sure.
Yeah, I just want to start by thanking all the public speakers, because you don't have to be here tonight, and this is part of how we get more public engagement and more feedback on the ATP. So thank you for your time, and for those who called in. I also just want to say to the point of like bilingual outreach, just for the record, that like Ventura County and your own sustainability division will sometimes hire like a community advocacy organization like Buen Vecino or someone, for example, to go into a community and do maybe even door knocking or house meetings, or like that's typically how you would engage like a population that's hard to reach and that doesn't come to Earth Days and that doesn't go to BAT meetings and things like that. So I just want to share that. I think that's a really good best practice for agencies and municipalities to follow. That being said, I'm also a consultant in my day job, so I understand that you're on budgets, you're on timelines. You've already probably set this out that like you're going to be finalizing and wrapping up October or something, right? Or at least like developing the plan based on the feedback. So maybe you have timelines and budgets that don't actually account for this, but this comment's more to the city, I guess, rather than the consultants, that I think that should be baked into budgets like this so that we don't run up against creating a plan that's not for, you know, the population that really needs it, the whole reason why we're here talking about it. So just to put a finer point on that, and I really appreciate everyone's supplemental comments on that point.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion on this item by the commission? Okay, it doesn't look like that. So this was just an information item, so that we could bring this item to the public, get input, and provide feedback to the staff and the engineers, which we have done now. So no further action on this item is required, which means that we can now move on to item 6B, which I understand is going to be given by Engineering Associate Clark Stanfill. Mr. Stanfill, if we can please have your report.
Okay, getting set up. We're getting there. Okay, so thank you, Vice Chair Mel, and good evening, commissioners. My name is Clark Stanfill, and I'm an associate engineer in the Public Works Department, and tonight I'll be providing you with information on an upcoming project to signalize the intersection of Avenida de los Árboles and Avenida de las Plantas. All right, so tonight I will give you some background and what we want to accomplish with this project, review the signal priority list and this intersection's ranking, show what the current conditions are at the intersection, present you with a conceptual plan showing what improvements we are proposing, share the outreach we have done and go over some of the comments we have already received, the tentative schedule and budget, and finally our recommendations. So let's get started with some background. So Árboles is an arterial roadway, which is a major through street that runs east-west with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. And Plantas is a secondary roadway that runs north-south that connects Árboles and Flores and has a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. Plantas and Árboles is a three-way stop-controlled intersection and was identified as the city's #1 priority for signal installation in 2022 and again in 2025. A disadvantage of the stop-controlled intersection, where cars have to come to a complete stop before continuing through, are backups during morning and evening peak commute times. This creates a lack of gaps during these peak traffic times due to the constant flow of cars, which makes it difficult for residents trying to access Árboles from their driveways and side streets. The project has also been included in the council-approved capital improvement budget. For the objective of this project, putting signals at this intersection will help us achieve enhanced mobility for pedestrians by giving them dedicated pedestrian signal and timing. Our concept will also show the addition of curb ramp extensions, which will enhance pedestrian visibility and result in a shorter walking distance within the street. We will improve the intersection visibility and safety during nighttime hours by adding streetlights. Restriping will allow us to connect the Class 2 bike lanes that are currently disconnected as we approach this intersection. And the traffic signals will improve access from neighboring residents to enter Árboles. At the June 25th Traffic Commission meeting, the signal prioritization was presented to this commission, and the results from the last 2 cycles are shown here. The top table shows the 2022 top 4 intersections. Sorry, the bottom table shows the top 2022 top 4 intersections, and the top table shows the 2025 top 4 intersections. And as you can see, Árboles and Plantas has been the #1 priority in 2022 and 2025. So now, since you have some background, let's look at what this intersection currently looks like. So again, this is a three-way stop-controlled intersection in a residential area. Outside the intersection, west of Calle Damasco, Arbalest has a striped center median, single lane of traffic, bike lane, and on-street parking. This is also the case east of Calle Manzano. Once you approach the intersection, the bike lanes are eliminated in order to add lanes to reduce vehicle queuing. In both directions, these additional lanes merge back into a single lane past the intersection. Some of the limiting factors we have to work around is the limited space in the public right-of-way. On the north side of the street, the city's right-of-way ends at the back of the existing 5-foot sidewalk, and with a 4-foot minimum clearance needed for ADA path of travel, a signal would not be able to be placed on the existing sidewalk. There is also existing private property trees, including mature oaks and landscaping at the back of the walk that we do not want to encroach on. We also face similar limiting factors on the southwest side of the intersection, with the right-of-way at the back of the sidewalk and another mature oak tree. With these limiting factors, we have to find the space to install the traffic signals while maintaining ADA path of travel without encroaching onto the private properties or disturbing the community's trees. Given the existing conditions that I mentioned, we had to think a bit outside the box in order to overcome these constraints. So here's the conceptual overview and limit of the project and what we feel will work best to overcome the constraints. To bypass the limited right-of-way and space issue, we're looking at using the curb ramp extensions shown in blue. This will give the necessary space to install the signals. We have used these curb extensions for pedestrian improvement projects on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, just like the one shown here that is located near Oak Lane. Restriping will happen between Calle Damasco and Calle Manzano, which will keep the lanes consistent and will connect the existing bike lanes outside of the intersection to make it continuous. Traveling eastbound would have a through lane, bike lane, and a dedicated right turn lane. Traveling westbound would have a through lane, bike lane, and a dedicated signalized left turn lane. Now let's take a little closer look at the intersection, where we show the curb extensions in blue again. The added benefit of these curb extensions, again, is to provide better pedestrian visibility and shorter walking distances in the roadway. Since the existing sidewalk on the north side does not provide the necessary clearance needed to adhere to pedestrian accessibility requirements, utilizing the curb extension allows us to redirect the path of travel to the curb extension to minimize the encroachment onto private properties. The traffic signals will be placed within the curb extensions. We'll also have pedestrians light and push buttons at all ramps. And again, I want to reiterate that the traffic signals will also have streetlights incorporated into them, which would increase visibility of the intersection during nighttime hours. And so this is our conceptual plan to improve all modes of transportation at this intersection. So now on to the public outreach. So far, we've established the project website and mailed 239 notices to nearby residents. We went door to door with the closest residents to inform them of the project, as well as an invitation to the community meeting that was held on August 27th. And so far, we've received a couple comments about the project. The first comment was by email, expressing concerns over the addition of the curb extensions and the difficulty it would make for larger trucks making the turns. Our response was that once the city obtains a consultant, they will run a turning analysis at the intersection to ensure the trucks can make the turn safely. The second comment was asked during the community meeting, where the resident brought up the difficulty they would have turning left from Arbalest into their driveway. This was addressed during the community meeting, which resulted in an update to the conceptual plan, which previously showed a left turn pocket on westbound Arbalest all the way from Plantis to Calle Manzano. So we updated our concept in this area to a shorter left turn pocket and added in the stripe median. This is also illustrated in attachment number 6 of the staff report. So since this project is in the concept phase, these questions, as well as any other comments, will be addressed during the design phase with our consultant. And now on to the tentative schedule and budget. So the project schedule started with our public outreach efforts, which we discussed in the previous slides. And this traffic commission meeting is also part of our public outreach. After this traffic commission meeting, we will issue a request for a proposal and work on selecting a consultant to perform the required studies and design of the project. The design phase will begin once City Council approves the consultant contract. And here is more of a timeline view of the project milestones. We are aiming to begin the design in January of 2026, again after City Council approves the consultant contract. Comments from the community and traffic commission will be incorporated during the design phase, with an expected completion sometime in summer of 2026. At this time, construction is expected to begin fall of 2026 and completed in spring of 2028. And our current council approved budget for the project is about $536,000. We have $150,000 designated for design in this fiscal year, and about $386,000 to use for construction in the next fiscal year, 2026-2027. And for our recommendations for tonight, which are to receive public input and provide feedback regarding the proposed traffic signal concept design. And with that, thank you for letting me present tonight, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Stanfill. Does the commission have any questions for staff before we get to public comments? Commissioner Guerra?
Okay, so I'm very familiar with Avenida de los Árboles. The bit of road that you're talking about from Calle Manzano up to Avenida de las Plantas,
Yes.
I'm concerned about the width or the distance, just because there's always parked cars on that street. So I don't know how you're going to navigate to add, so right there in that, on that graph there, or
Yeah.
picture, you don't have the parked cars. They're always there. And so I can see why they didn't connect the bike lane,
Yeah.
because there's just no room. So I don't know how you're going to do that.
So
Honestly, I don't know how you're
We-
going to do that.
we are keeping most of the parking. The curb extensions are pretty localized. So now, since it's a single lane of traffic, because right now there's that merge lane as well, right?
Yes.
So we're taking that merge lane out to give the space for the bike lane and keep that parked street parking available. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so if we just look at this image, the parked cars are still shown on both sides of the street over here. So they are still, that is being maintained.
Yeah, because we're gaining like at least 20 feet by taking out that merge lane,
Yeah,
since it's pretty wide.
I know what you're showing,
Yeah.
but I drive it all the time, and I don't know how you're going to do it. But I trust in your,
Well, we'll have the consultant look
yeah.
really into that then.
Yeah.
And the main loss of parking is the inside the intersection, which you're not supposed to park as is, especially with the new AB 413 daylighting law. So beyond that, there really is a very minimal, as Clark mentioned. These bulb outs are very small.
So I'm talking about so when you go onto Arbalest from the freeway, let's go from the freeway, and you're going down Arbalest from the freeway, that is 2 lanes. Then it becomes 1 lane. And now you're going to make it into 2 lanes again, and then add a bike lane, and then you're going to have parked cars.
So currently at this location, sorry, I'm pulling something up. Okay. Boom. Oh no, wrong one. We're getting there. So currently, before and after this intersection, it's a single lane with a bike lane and street parking. So we're keeping that consistent through the intersection, if that makes sense.
There's no bike lane, that it ends.
Right, at
yes,
the
'cause
intersection it
right.
ends.
I mean, before the intersection,
Yeah.
there's no. You're wanting to connect it, but right now it's not connected, and there's parked cars.
Yeah, but there's also a eastbound second lane that's going east, like a merge lane. So that's going to be eliminated. So we're going to take that 15 or 20 foot of real estate and turn it into bike lanes. So that's how we're magically creating the the real estate that's necessary.
I do have few other questions, if I could.
Of course.
When you talked about the outreach,
Yeah.
what was the feedback from the homeowners that were right in front of the parked, that would have that traffic light right in their front yard?
We knocked on their door, I believe, the one with the red roof on the left side. I believe they were home, and they were pretty neutral. They said, thank you for letting us know about the community meeting and project, but neutral. The one next to it wasn't home, and I believe, yeah, so we haven't heard feedback from them yet. We have heard from sorry, I can't see, but probably 3 houses down. He was one that made the comment during the community meeting about turning left onto, but he said he's happy with the project, that it's happening, because he says these are good improvements for this intersection because he has gotten rear-ended here before. So he was in favor of it, just the left turn pocket, which we added after he brought up that concern. And then the resident who lives kind of further down on Plantis that brought up the turning of the trucks in this intersection, he said he liked the project overall, but that was his one concern.
So I just had a question, because you're going to have a traffic light there, and then a few less than a mile, you're going to have another traffic light.
Yeah.
Right at what is that? Is that Moore Park and Arbalest? Yeah. So is it typical that you would have that short of space between traffic lights? Because you're going to stop, and then you're going to stop again.
Well, so currently this is a stop sign, so people have to stop. So now we're going to let them not. It's going to be probably a green light the majority of the time on Arbalest, so they won't have to stop anymore.
You're going to have a green light on Arbalest there?
Yeah, the way the signal is going to operate here at this intersection, it's going to be rest in green on the main street, which is how we program all our signal lights. On your main street, it's going to be rest in green, and then if you have a side street, in this case Plantis, then the signal will then change to serve that side street. And the idea here is to accommodate and keep traffic moving from the freeway, the 23 freeway, try to get to Moore Park Road without coming to a stop. Because the issue right now is with the stop sign, the stop controlled nature of that intersection, if you live on a house fronting Arbalest, or if you live on one of the side streets during the peak hours, the call and concerns that we get is that we have a hard time getting out onto Arbalest because there's no gaps. So once you put the signal in, if you keep the traffic moving and not stop at the intersection, that's going to create more gaps. More gaps are going to be like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds long, so that if you're in one of the driveways on Arbalest or one of the side streets, you're going to have a better opportunity to get in and out of Arbalest.
Were the majority of those collisions at that intersection, or were they further down?
There's just that one a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, we don't really have a history of a lot of collisions on Arbalest.
Oh, because I thought that was in the report that you had like 38.
In the report, it cites traffic incidents
Yeah.
at a high rate, if not the highest rate.
Yeah, I don't believe those are all at the intersection itself. I think it's along the arterial, but we can.
Yeah,
we can
and
look into that.
then in addition to, I think it was probably around 2014 or 2015 or so, back then we did the road diet for Arbalest, the segment between 23 Freeway and Moore Park Road. we did a before and after study, we did find that because of that road diet, the collision rate along that entire stretch has dropped down significantly, as well as the speed has been reduced. So we would imagine that even with having the signal installed to replace the four-way stop, you're going to now have, vehicles going the entire distance. Basically, you can keep that uniform speed along that whole stretch.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Selm.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious. Let me think about how to phrase this. I know that in the consideration of where to place these, you think about the warrants like A and B, and then additional engineers considerations, right? Would you say then that like this corrective act, this is correcting for what you just spoke to, Mr. Mashiko, which is like getting out of driveways? Like that's part of the engineer's justification for this reaching the highest priority.
Yeah, that's just something extra to consider. That's not part of the calculation or the points that were awarded for this intersection. We looked at this location strictly based on the amount of traffic volume and the collision history. Because this street carries, Arbalest carries over 20,000 around 20,000 vehicles per day. So that's, pretty heavy traffic. And then Plantis, I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm guessing that street probably carries about 6,000 vehicles per day. So this is a well-traveled intersection, as well as, in addition, we do have that crossing guard that's, it's no longer there, but it is a location where there's a school crosswalk. All four legs are marked in yellow, and that's how it will be continued to be marked once the signal is installed.
I appreciate that, and I have to say I've talked to some folks who live in this area, and some of the concerns that they had, I think you've actually accounted for in this plan, which is there was concern that I had heard previously about like merging immediately after the stoplight. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I do have one last question, which is the folks to the north, I think it's 1211, that house is to the right of the red one. I'd really be interested to hear what they have to say, and I'm also curious if this helps them. I can't imagine if it would be better or worse than a stop sign. I can just imagine they just kind of have to gun it and hope that the light is on their side, it's favoring them. I don't really understand from their perspective what that's like. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that, and also maybe additional outreach to be done there.
Yeah, I think at least for that house, I think during the design process, once we have a consultant on board, we'll continue the outreach, especially those homes closest to the intersection, because we're going to want to make sure that we address as many concerns as possible. And those vehicles or the homes at the intersection, most likely what they're going to have to do now is they're going to have to make right-ins and right-outs of their driveway versus the current stop-controlled nature. They can make left turns, probably left turns in. But in addition, once you get a signal there, they're probably going to hear less, idling noises or stopping and going, or, the sounds of vehicles coming to a stop, especially trucks in that area, because there's that commercial center right there. So they're probably going to have a little bit less noise to deal with. So there's going to be some pros and cons. I mean, it's going to be mixed, but I think once you get away from the intersection, that's where you're going to see the greatest benefit, greatest improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? I don't see any more questions. Ms. Vasquez, do we have any public speakers on this item?
No, we have no individuals that have requested to speak, but there was a written statement. The written statement was provided to the TTAC prior to the meeting. It's also posted to the city's website, and hard copies are here provided in the boardroom tonight.
Okay, and I believe we've all received that written statement. Commissioner Selm, you have something else?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for reminding me about bringing up this comment. I do have a question for staff about what Ms. Naum mentioned about installing a signal under these circumstances could lead to unintended consequences like increased congestion, frustration, and higher likelihood of rear-end collisions. Can you all speak to that comment?
Okay, yeah, that's basically a general comment that if you look through the California MUTCD, I think we talked about it last time, that's the engineering manual that we use to determine whether or not a signal is necessary or not. That's just a general approach that all agencies, if you're going to put in a signal, you definitely need to study it thoroughly, is sort of what it's saying. And that's what we're doing right now. This is part of that evaluation process. And, you know, by taking a look at the, you know, travel patterns, observations out in the field, which we've been doing too, and also noting, you know, all the concerns that have occurred along Arbalest. I think, you know, the presentation addresses a lot of the concerns that have been presented to us, and that's why we feel a signal here would be definitely very beneficial.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment referencing the school. I think that has added value to the city, protecting our children, giving them, you know, clear signal indicators, especially on a busy road like that. So I look forward to seeing it.
All right, thank you, especially since this is the intersection where we lost a crossing guard this year. So you know, far be it from me to critique a controlled intersection that we were complaining about was so busy, but yet now there's no crossing guard there. So I do have one question, which is in the statement that we received from Ms. Naum, she makes a statement. The proposed signal does not meet the necessary warrants as determined by me and 4 licensed traffic engineers. And just for the record and for the benefit of people at home, maybe we could have staff address that comment.
Okay, well, basically, yeah, we disagree with that statement. We did our analysis. We presented the information to the Traffic Commission in June. So basically, we do have a transparent process when we, you know, look to signalize intersections throughout the city. We exchanged emails with Ms. Naum, providing the additional backup information, traffic counts, queuing studies, things like that. And also, we actually pointed out some sections of that MUTCD manual that, you know, we feel that she overlooked and she misinterpreted. So we followed the manual's guidance to a T when we evaluated this, the signal warrants, and determined, you know, this location is #1 on our priority list. So beyond that, you know, there was no additional supporting data presented from her end to, you know, show if, you know, if there were any errors on our side. They were just statements.
Mr. Mashiko, but have you been contacted by any of those other traffic engineers?
No. We only received the correspondence from Ms. Naum. No, none of the 4 other engineers contacted us directly to, you know, share their point of view. So we don't know who these 4 engineers are, and we're open to speaking with them if they wanted to, and share the information to them as that we did with Ms. Naum.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Guerra.
So going back to the statement by Ms. Naum, because of her experience and her expertise, I'm just wondering if it would be prudent to touch base with her and see if you could reach out to some of the other engineers that are disputing this.
Yeah, I can help address that. There has been significant correspondence already with Ms. Naum, and this, as Mr. Mashiko indicated, this intersection is being analyzed and designed in the same fashion that all other intersections citywide have been designed and signalized intersections citywide have been designed over the last 20 to 30 years. So we're confident in this determination, but we're happy to speak with any other engineers that would like to discuss with us or have any differing opinions. But there's been significant correspondence back and forth already with this resident.
One more question. What's the likelihood of having a crossing guard there after the traffic light is put up?
Yeah, we'd have to go back and look at basically the factor at this intersection was a lack of utilization by pedestrians. So this can only help that situation. Having the signalized intersection there would only encourage or compel more people to use the intersection, especially if we are able to pull off what's indicated here with shorter crossings and bulb outs and everything. So if additional utilization takes place and people start using the intersection, then there would be an increased likelihood of a potential future crossing guard.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions for staff? Okay, then at this point, I'm going to close this item to public comments and open it up for discussion among the commissioners. I suppose my lead-off comment would be this particular item is not new. This has been on the traffic signal installation priority list for 3 years. So I don't think that just based on this was just before us in June. So I mean we're familiar with this. I think what we're seeing right now is the actual designs and the curb extensions and whatnot. But I'm not an engineer. I don't even play one on TV. But I trust that the city has done their due diligence in terms of what's going to work for this intersection. And my particular concern was not even a concern. I was just really happy to see that this is finally getting legs because. Look, the crossing guard issue was a really hot topic in here, and when we saw that the crossing guard was going to get eliminated from this intersection, this was concerning. And so I think this traffic signal alleviates a lot of that concern, but like the rest of you, I'd be interested in knowing what the immediate homeowners in this intersection have to say about the positioning of the traffic signal and what it does to their ingress and egress from their homes. Commissioner Weichel.
One other comment, we've talked a lot about the residents. The businesses, Southwest Corner, is that a gas station?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you've got other retail, the dollar store, and a big box retail right there, parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Have they been talked to about what's going on?
Not yet. But once we get into more of the design phase, we'll be communicating with them.
I would think it would only benefit them, right? Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Any comments? No. Okay. Then again, this item was an information item, so there's no action required by us. So we can move on to the next item in our agenda, which is the status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. I'll open that issue up to staff to comment on.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Not a whole lot of detail to present here other than the fact that the crossing guard program item that I believe you considered in May of this year did go to City Council on July 8th, and they approved 3 actions listed in the agenda. And then beyond that, the program is now underway for the 25-26 school year with a total of 14 crossing guard locations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mashiko. Moving on to item number 8, commission referrals. Staff have any comment there?
Just another brief one. It's indicating that we did provide some comments or provided a response in regard to Commissioner Guerra's statement regarding the discontinuing crossing guard service. at the intersection of Plantis and Arbalest, which we just discussed.
Okay. Thank you for that. Item number 9, work program and commission schedule. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff about the schedule? The schedule. So I think, well, we try not to get too far ahead of ourselves, right? So I think the next meeting is scheduled for October 22. But I don't think we have any questions about that. So we can move on to number 10, Traffic Commission comments and discussion. Are there any comments or discussion items from the commissioners? I have one item, and I don't know if this was actually appropriate to raise in item number 8, commission referrals, but I've noticed that the TO Ranch project is in full swing over there on Hampshire Road, and look, I don't know anything about it, but I get off the freeway at Hampshire every day, and that traffic backs up onto the 101, and then I'm thinking about this TO Ranch project and what that's going to look like for traffic once you get off the freeway. Is there anything in the pipeline for the Traffic Commission with regard to traffic in that area, specifically as it originates with that project?
Yes, thank you. I can help discuss that one. That project has been starting and stopping a few times for various reasons, but it has already been approved and conditioned, and there's no additional approvals or reviews associated with that project. But they are contributing, I believe, over $1 million in traffic fees to help with future mitigation of local intersections and so forth citywide. One of which is the big project that's necessary over there is a complete retrofit of the entire Hampshire interchange. This is like a $100 million project. It's on our radar. We've been pursuing getting it on the state radar and trying to find some local, some state, not local, statewide funding to help make that project a reality. That particular intersection is already impaired, as you mentioned. It's not really the result of the TO Ranch project, and therefore they can't be expected to fix the pre-existing condition. But we are pursuing a long-term fix for that location. That's probably our last major freeway interchange that can be or should be upgraded, and so that is under pursuit. That's one of those large term projects that's going to need 90% of the funding to come from some other source or some outside pot of money, and so we're getting it on the state radar and hoping that it can somehow elevate to the status of being awarded some grant funding in the future.
All right, that's good to know. Appreciate those comments.
That project also has been designed in such a fashion that the residents on site, like they have a park on site, they have like a market on site, they have a restaurant on site, they have a dog run on site, etc., co-working spaces on site. So, it's being designed in some modern way to help, cut down on the vehicle trips necessarily, because in many cases, and with a lot of those things being right there on the property, then that's that many less trips that people have to take. And in addition, it's as close to the freeway as it can possibly get. So at least and that's many of the other 101 corridor projects that are in the general plan for redevelopment are not deep into the city, so that you don't have traffic extending deep into the city. So the VMT is low. But that would be the best response to your question.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Just out of curiosity, wanted to know if there was anything that would be coming to us, but that's probably, if there was, it wouldn't be anytime soon. I imagine.
Yeah, those approvals and et cetera all took place several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Also, on item number 10, we did have speaker cards, but I think the speakers have now left. So I don't think we have any more speakers. Is that correct, Ms. Vasquez?
Yeah, they provided just written statements for your guys' general knowledge for the
Okay.
commission. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Garrett, did you have something to add on number 10?
No, actually on number 7. So, just my own comment is that I understand that an RFQ has been sent out for the school crossing guard program, and I'm wondering if we could get a report on that at our next meeting, or as soon as we know, or as soon as staff knows what the status is on that RFQ. And I'm wondering if there is a request to add a crossing guard, does that come under the jurisdiction of CVUSD? In other words, they would need to pay for it, or does the city pay for it?
Yes, so the request for proposals is currently out there, and I believe they are due next month. So by November or so, we should have some determination of whether we have a contracting agency on board to help provide the crossing guard services going forward, and that item would go to City Council for their review or approval. But we can provide a status update on that under item number 7 next month. Any additional locations that don't meet the city's policy that are desired or requested by CVUSD to add crossing guards to, yes, would be up to CVUSD to provide. Either they, as we've indicated before, they can provide them themselves, which many school districts do with their own staff, or we're trying to structure this agreement with the contracting agency in such a fashion that they can easily have that agency add those locations.
So they would go through the agency?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
At their expense.
That is correct.
So we're going with less crossing guards, but we have the same budget. Is that right? And we're expecting that there should be some money left over. Is that right?
Yes, and the council had previously directed staff to apply those savings toward active transportation projects and permanent infrastructure improvement projects that help facilitate bicycle and pedestrian mobility.
I thought it was to help programs for schools that had more where there is more walkability. That's what when I was there, I thought that's what that was what the gist of the request was.
I'd have to go back and see how that was. I believe it was just more for generally to be utilized, that budget saving, which is not a significant amount, it's probably in the $100,000 range, to be repurposed or utilized for the same concept of walking to school, biking to school, to facilitate that. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Can I get clarity on that, or could the commission about that shortfall, about where it would be applied, especially because we were talking specifically about schools where they would have more walkability because they're not necessarily driving to and from.
Yeah, that was one of the written recommendations, the city council item. So we can go back and see exactly how that was worded.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So now we're moving on to item 11, which is our future meetings. The next Transportation Traffic Advisory Commission meeting will be held at 6:00 p.m. on Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, right here in the Civic Arts Plaza boardroom. And with that, we're done. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.